I'm Alyssa.
And I'm Mike. Welcome back to the A&M podcast. So today we kind of wanted to talk about movie sequels. You know, all the movies out there that like are successful. I feel like they end up getting sequels, and especially lately, it feels like like a lot of movies get sequels, and and don't necessarily need to get sequels. I think. Um, and like for me, the one that comes to mind right now, they're I think they're making a Toy Story 5,
Toy Story 5, yeah.
which I kind of felt like they should have ended those movies at Toy Story 3. Like I was okay with Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3. Why can I not say that? But I felt like Toy Story 4 was unnecessary, and that was though because, and this is the way I look at it, is if if they've told enough of the story and you're like, you know, I don't I don't need to know more,
Mm-hmm.
then I think that's where the story should end. I feel like Toy Story 3 ended that way. And I think Toy Story 4, even though it was an unnecessary sequel, also ended that way, where it was like, okay, this is the end of these characters' story.
They keep doing but wait, there's more,
Yeah.
I think, with it. Um, it looked like to me Toy Story 5, unless it was a fake, because I heard some people saying it was a fake like thing, but it looked like Toy Story 5 is about kids being on their electronics too much or something
Right. Yeah.
instead of playing with real toys.
Yeah. I had heard that too. Which I mean,
The iPad Kid
that's a
era.
good that's a good angle to take with it. I think if you're gonna do a sequel,
But 5
um,
is a lot
but 5 is a lot.
for a Toy Story type movie.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's not the same kind of movie as like a Star Wars or a Harry Potter. I think it's okay for a movie like Harry Potter to go so many. There was another book, I can't remember. It was something, it was kind of like Harry Potter.
Lord of the Rings, you
Was
thinking
it
of?
Lord of the Rings?
Might
It
have
might
been
have
Lord
been.
of the Rings.
And if it's like a book like that, to I think have multiple sequels, that's different because it's a bunch of different kind of books.
Right.
Even I
The
think comics, like if you're doing, but it's not like they have Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2,
right.
Spider-Man 3. They have like the different.
Yeah, the thing with those movies, like the Marvel movies or even the DC movies, is
Mm-hmm.
you know they're kind of different movies, and they bring them all together and then they go their own directions. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you can do it when it's like kind of same thing with Star Wars. It's like a whole cinematic universe and there's all these other stories you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're like something like Toy Story, when you're building these movie or another one
I was gonna
that's
say not
coming
to
out.
just pick on Toy Story because
Yeah,
we have a
no,
couple.
yeah, Shrek. They're making another
Oh,
Shrek,
I saw that too.
and I love the Shrek movies. Like those are
Yeah,
really good movies.
I really only
But I
cared
felt
for
like,
the first one.
yeah, I felt like the sequels to that were not as
Yeah.
good. What the movie that I'm dying for a sequel of is Austin Powers. I really want another Austin
What?
Powers movie. I don't think there's been enough of those.
I just never really got into Austin Powers.
But I think they made 3 of those, right? And
Yeah,
they supposedly they're considering making another one,
of
but
course they are.
you
Not
know,
with what's his name?
uh, rest in peace, Vern Troyer.
No,
Oh,
I was gonna say who actually played Austin Powers.
why? He's gonna be in it. I mean, he'd
Really?
have
I
to be
just
in
feel
it.
no, I know. I just feel like he's so much older now. That's
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
mean,
saying.
not that they can't do things
I
like
feel like
that,
it wouldn't be the same character. Vern
but
Troyer.
and I'm trying to think of other ones because like even with the Star Wars movies, like Star Wars came out, it was super popular. They wanted to make
Mhm.
more. Supposedly, George Lucas at the time said that he had a whole storyline written out,
Yeah.
and for those movies and for the prequel movies that they made a little later, and
Mhm.
um, I think Star Wars was the kind of the exception to the rule because usually like the second movie, the sequel is never quite as good. And there's
Sometimes
been
it
a
is.
few,
Sometimes it's
yeah,
better.
there's been a few where the sequel's been better,
Yeah.
but both sequels, I think, to Star Wars, or real Star Wars fans generally think that, and people are going to disagree with me on this, and I don't really care, but the general idea of the first trilogy is that the second movie is the best. The Empire Strikes Back is the best of those. And then the the new sequel trilogies have just not. That new sequel trilogy wasn't very good.
Hmm.
It wasn't very well done. But but
When
yeah,
it's too many like that, though, I don't know. Maybe you just have to be a real like super fan because, like for Star Wars, for example, someone like me. I mean, and hey, I'm not for everybody, but somebody like me to watch like Star Wars movie after Star Wars movie
right.
after Star Wars movie, it's kind of like I don't know.
Yeah,
But then
you're not really no offense, but you're not really the target audience. I don't think for those movies.
maybe I
At
am.
least you didn't
Maybe
used
I
to be.
should be.
Yeah, well, that's where they're going with it now.
I
I
like the
think, but
cartoons though, not the cartoons.
like
Excuse me,
the
the Clone Wars.
Clone Wars. Yeah,
Clone
Clone
Wars
Wars
is a
was
good
good.
one.
Clone Wars was good.
And that other
And
one,
see,
that other show, Obi-Wan.
yeah,
I
Obi
liked Obi-Wan a
Obi Wan
lot.
was good. Some of the Disney Plus stuff that they. I mean
Yeah.
that's where I think like those. I don't think as much of as sequels as expansions of, and that's where I say with
'Cause they
like
still
something
tie
like the
in.
MCU, they're expansions of a universe. They're different
Mhm.
stories. They're somewhat related, but it's not like telling the same story and adding to it. You know,
Yeah, that's
which is I
true.
think what we're talking about with other sequels.
That's true.
Oh, here's a good one, and I don't really have much interest in it because I wasn't that interested in the first one. But Beetlejuice,
Oh,
Beetlejuice, they
yeah,
have
I
that
saw
sequel coming
that.
out, and that's like it's at least 30 years old. That movie is at least probably more than that. Actually, it's a lot more than that. I don't know how old it is.
I think it must be just like the writers having just like a moment of wait, I have an idea of
Yeah.
how of like what we can add to this cuz for example, Halloween Town. Remember that movie? I like that movie.
Vaguely, yeah.
Um there's Halloween Town and I think there's a Halloween Town 2. Halloween Town 1, yeah, it didn't really need one. Unless there's
Yeah.
not a Halloween Town 2, but I'm pretty sure there's a Halloween Town 2
But
that
that's
I
the thing
saw.
to me is like there's a lot of movies that like when you see the end of the movie or the way the movie ends, you're like, wow, I'd really like to know more about this story. And I can't, I don't have a specific example coming to mind at the moment.
Yeah.
But then I feel like, you know, there's a lot of them that they think that they have, you know, have need for a continuation of the story, and there really isn't. And I think that's not to keep picking on Toy Story, but or let's go back to Shrek. You know,
Yeah.
like the way the last Shrek ended, I think
Uh-huh.
was a perfect way to wrap up that story. And I think a lot of times what happens is they do it with that intention of okay, we're gonna finish this story, we're gonna put a nice little bow on it, and then the
Yeah.
dollar signs come in, and it's like you know we could go back and make some more money off of that. And I think
Right.
that's where it gets to the point where it's like
I think with
they
that,
overkill it.
it would be a better like moment of just creating a different movie with like a similar concept. Like Toy Story, for example, instead of making a Toy Story 5 where it's
Right.
about technology, kind of do a different story,
Right.
but same concept
Yeah.
about like technology, like iPad kids. Kind of like how, what was that one movie with the robots?
You talking about Wally?
Wally. Kind
Yeah.
of like, how that was like a
Yeah. It was
technology taking over type situation.
right.
Obviously not to that extreme, but what's another one that just came to my mind? Santa Claus. Santa Claus
Yeah.
was Santa Claus 1 was such a good movie.
Right.
It's to this day it's still my one of my favorites, like top 3 favorite Christmas movies.
Right.
Like such a classic, such a,
Yeah.
when you're growing up in the 90s, like such a just comfy cozy feeling when you watched Santa Claus 1. Then they came out with Santa Claus 2, and Santa Claus 2, it was whatever. It was like, oh, okay. I mean, you didn't even really need to make a sequel to it. It kind of ended all sweet and stuff, but like, okay, it's
Right.
not that bad.
Right.
Then they went into like 3, and I think they even did a 4, maybe,
I don't
with
think they did a
like
4, but
once they went into
they
like
did the
Jack
Disney Plus
Frost.
series. Yeah, that was 3, and then they did the
Yeah,
Disney.
that's what I'm
And
thinking of.
so I think the reason that the first Santa Claus movie was better than the
Mhm.
others is it was I have a comparison that I won't make right away, but um it was taking the idea, you know, that that this could happen, like that this
Right.
could really happen, because here he's just this guy who's, works for a toy company like I
Oh
do.
yeah. Oh, wait a
And
minute.
hold on, if I hear anybody up on the roof,
The
but
rough.
the roof, but but so it was kind of like, introducing you, I guess, into this like world that that you didn't, that exists in myth and all that, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And but you were seeing it for real, and it was just the whole
Uh-huh.
that whole aspect of it. And the other two movies got so deep into, like, they had like Father Time, and
Right.
they had,
Jack
Jack Frost,
Frost.
and they
Yeah.
had the Easter Bunny and all that, and that's, I think, where it got like, and I'll still watch those movies around Christmas, because I still think like they're not as good, but I still think they're fun to watch.
Uh,
But the comparison for me that I was gonna make is, because Iron Man is my spirit animal or whatever,
yeah.
but the first Iron Man movie was like, it was believable. It
Yeah.
was believable that a guy, who was a genius and was an expert at robotics could, given the materials, create this suit and all that.
Right.
And the other ones, then you get into the whole Marvel universe, where, okay, now there's like Thor from another planet, and that's where it gets a little. And so the other Iron Man movies too get into a little bit of like less, believable things.
Yeah.
So that's where it becomes more fantasy. So,
Just like
um,
a completely kind of like what I was saying with Toy Story, just like a completely different type of movie. Like
right.
I'm watching now Toy Story 1, I guess it's or not Toy Story 1, Santa Claus 1, it already was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, this gives you good like a home vibes of normal Christmas in the 90s, early 2000s, and
Yeah.
that's nice to watch. But then it goes into kind of the make believe situation, but it still is realistic
Hmm.
somehow. All the other ones, like, oh, okay, now you're living in the North Pole, and
Yeah.
like Jack Frost is your enemy, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
what's happening?
Yeah. Yeah. I
And then
think
they
you're
went
right.
even further with it. Ugh, no thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and I kind of like, again, going back um again, we're picking on Toy Story too much, because it's not about it.
We like
But
Toy Story, by the
but
way. We just don't. Yeah.
I mean, I like Frozen. Frozen, I think, is another one, right? They did Frozen, and then they did Frozen 2, and I hear now they're going to do a Frozen 3, and I feel like that's an example of they're just, you know,
Oh yeah.
dragging everything they can out of that franchise.
Well, even I think.
And a lot of those, like, classic Disney movies, right? Like
Mhm.
The Lion King, they did it with. They did
Oh
a
yeah.
Lion King 2. I think they did it with Aladdin, but the second Aladdin one was back in the day when they didn't have direct to digital, but they did it direct to like
I don't even remember
videotape.
that one.
Yeah. Um,
Aladdin
I think they
too.
might have even did three Aladdin movies, if I'm not, but I might be wrong about that.
Mm.
But I feel like that was like back in the day when Walt Disney was making movies, and he was making like Snow White. Like, there
Yeah.
was never a thought back then of, hey, let's make a sequel to Snow White. It was, okay,
Oh
what
yeah.
other stories can we tell? And then that's why they did
Um.
Sleeping Beauty, and that's why they
Oh
did
yeah.
Bambi, and
Yeah.
it was like, let's tell other stories. Let's not just keep building on the stories that are already successful. And
Well,
I
I
think
think.
there's too much of a tendency today to just try to build on what you've already done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. I think even outside of even like sequels now, instead of like there's less original ideas and a lot of like, okay, well, we've kind of exhausted the sequels to this movie, so let's make a live action of it too.
Oh yeah,
You know, I still want to
true,
watch the
very
live
true.
action Lion King, but like that
It's
type of situation where instead of just continuing to make original different movies and ideas, and you can use concepts that you would use like again with this the Toy Story, like you can use concepts like that to
right.
make a new movie, but I think to continue making just sequel after sequel after sequel, and
Right.
okay, well now let's make a live action.
Right.
Let's make a paper cut like version of it.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
make a Gumby version of it.
So going. Well, going. You're right on that, and it's funny because when you talk about the Lion King, like I enjoyed the live action Lion King, which was really not live action. It was
Yeah, I want
obviously
to
all
see it.
CGI,
Yeah.
but it was almost like shot for shot, just
Of the original.
a CGI version of the original. So that's I mean
Crazy.
that's why I enjoyed it, I guess,
Yeah.
right? But because the original was good.
Hmm.
um, but another similar thing too when you think about like the Grinch, right? Now
Oh
this is a
yeah.
different example though. First of all, they're making a sequel to the Grinch movie with Jim
Did
Carrey.
they
Did you
only
know that?
had one, right?
Yeah, they're making a
They
sequel to that. But
I
it
would
was
probably
funny to
watch that.
me. It was funny. It might be good. There might be more to tell there, but
That's
um,
true.
it was funny. But that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, where there's not really a sequel necessary. Like his
Right.
character arc went from he's the bad guy to he's the good guy.
To him,
That's
yeah.
you've told that character arc, so there's no need to extend
Unless you're
that
showing
story.
him like, look, now he's living in Whoville and he's all good. Oh, he's going bad again. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
know.
and then it just becomes
But
kind of
then you're
lame.
forcing it in that situation. That's where
Right.
it comes to you forcing the sequel out
Maybe
of
what
it.
they're doing is they're going to make it that, like, because he was different than all the Who's, and he just got accidentally left there, according to that story. So maybe it's all his
So
people
sad.
coming, and they're all like him. I don't
And he
know.
was
Any
bullied. Ooh, that would
anyway,
be a
but
good
then
way to go through it.
right, but then there was the other animated one that came out a couple of years later.
You better watch what you
With
say. They're gonna steal your
I know, right? I copyright that idea right now. Um, but then there was then there was that other one that came out a couple of years ago with Doctor Strange as the voice of the with Benedict Cumberbatch as the voice of the Grinch. And when I heard
Okay.
about that, I'm like, okay, we don't need this. Like we already had an animated one that was done
Yeah.
back in the 60s or 70s or whenever the
I
classic one
love
was
that
done. Me
one.
too. And then we had the movie, and the movie was great. The
Uh
movie was
huh.
a great rendition of that. It was a bigger story, a bigger version of the story. You got to
Still a
kind of find out
favorite.
why the Grinch was the way he was, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, why? We don't need another one. And then I watched it, and it was really good. It was a different version of the story. It was a different version of the story
The
from the other one.
sequel?
No, the other the CGI animated one with Benedict Cumberbatch as the Grinch. I don't
Oh,
know if you've
where
ever seen
he's.
that
I
one.
don't think I've ever seen it. Is that the one where he kind of looks like weirder, though? He's like
I
more
mean,
round,
yeah, probably. It's like I
right?
said, it's CGI. But
Hmm.
that one's really good. Like I
Because they have the
wasn't
cartoon
expecting it to
too.
be like I was expecting it to be okay, why? We don't but it was again, it was a different telling of the story and it was actually I was surprised how like it's another one
Hmm.
that I'll watch every year. So let me ask you this. Let's switch gears a little bit. Two things. Are there any movies you can think of that you wish they'd make a sequel to but they haven't? And then are there any movies um I forget what the rest of that was. Well, let's start with that and maybe I'll remember it.
That I wish they make a sequel to. You know what I want them to make a sequel to? Their Christmas movies. But I want to see a sequel to Four Christmases.
Four Christmases.
I think
That
they
would
could
be
make a good
see
sequel out of
now
that
that
because they had a baby at the end.
yeah, that's an example of one that they left the story open that you could say, okay, I would be interested to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think they ever will because it's been so long by now. But
right. Here's one that I can think of. If you're talking Christmas movies, that I feel like if they did, it would be a mistake. But I could see them trying to is
yeah.
Christmas with the Cranks.
Yeah,
Like
there's not
that.
really much to tell there, but
Right, right. That's why I'm saying that. I feel like again, that was a story that everything was boxed up in one. It was a nice
yeah.
bow on top. It was just a perfect story. It had a beginning, it had a middle, and it had an end.
Yeah.
But I could see.
They could take it like, where, oh, now the daughter got married and is
But I
having
mean,
a family, and
like
I
even
don't
what
know.
you're
Yeah.
saying there, like that's stretching for a story. You know
But
what I
like
mean?
Four Christmases, now they can do
Yeah.
it like, oh, we have a baby now, and now we're
Right.
bouncing through families this way, or trying to avoid our families.
Right.
Like, I think they can go somewhere with that. TV shows though, like, what do you think of? Do you think a TV show? Because a movie can obviously have too many sequels.
Right.
Do you think a TV show can have too many series ever.
Too many seasons. You know what's
Or
one?
yeah, seasons.
So, and this was one I mentioned on our, I think it was on our first episode, on the 20 questions episode, is
Yeah.
that Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Mhm.
It was a good show.
Mhm.
And I think it did 8 seasons. And sometime around season 5 or 6, like they ended it because it was on ABC, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
And, and I might have some of this wrong, but, but they were canceling it. It was going off.
Mhm.
So they ended the story, and it was a perfect ending. And then they said, you know what? We want to run it for another season. And I
Yeah.
think they ran it for a couple more after that. So it was like, the one character, they basically had him that he was gonna. It was like the main character. They had it that he was gonna die at the end. Perfect way to end the series.
Yeah.
Well, then they come back the next season, and they bring him back, but it wasn't like him. It was like some version of him from another universe or something like that, and it was an evil version of him in that.
Mhm.
And then they made it almost like, oh well, but maybe this one actually has his memories from before he died, so maybe it could be him again. And then the guy just is bad,
like pushing it too
yeah,
much.
but then the guy's just bad, and they let him die off or whatever happened to him. And then they bring it back. They bring him back again, but now it's a robot version of the main character, and so again,
like reaching.
yeah, and again, like if they came out with another season of that, I'd probably watch it because I like the series.
Yeah.
But it gets a little bit. There's a term for like when something like that is pushing it too far. I think that's what we'll call this episode, jumping the shark. Sequels jumping the shark, right? And you know where that comes from?
No.
Jumping the shark.
I
So
know jumping ship.
no, but you've never heard that
No.
term. Oh, it jumped. This is jumping the shark.
Mm-mm.
It's or jumping a shark. I forget. But
Jumping.
it was Happy Days back in the day in this TV series in the '70s.
Sunday, Monday, happy days.
Yeah.
Tuesday, Friday.
So when it was getting to the point where that series had been on too long, and it was just getting like crazy, like the one of the main characters, Fonzie. I don't know if you've ever heard of that character.
Of course, I've heard of Fonzie.
Yeah. So they said that series had really like lost its mojo. Like being popular in that, because there was an episode where he was jumping over a shark on his motorcycle, and I forget the whole context of why he was doing that. It was to prove something to somebody, or I don't remember. But that's where that term comes from. That's when they say that series had kind of lost its vibe.
Kind of like, yeah.
And so I think that's what a lot of series do. I think that's what happens with a lot of series is they get to that point where it's time to stop. The Office, I think.
I was gonna say that's a great example too. Like The Office. If I'm being honest, I think they saw what happened with The Office. I think is that they saw how successful it was. Like people loved watching that. To this day, people love watching it, and not realizing that the main thing with it is Michael Scott.
Yeah.
Michael Scott made it, and then once Michael Scott wasn't around anymore, they thought that they could just carry it like, oh, let's get Will Ferrell. People think he's funny. Like, let's just get him on board. And it wasn't bad with Will Ferrell in it.
And he was only in it.
Same.
I think he was only in it
few
for
episodes.
Like a couple episodes, and that was intention.
Yeah.
That was the intention, was he would only be in it for a couple episodes.
And then they got somebody else, and I think if I was them, I would have saved all that money that they just used on all of those other seasons, and either I don't know why Michael Scott left. I don't know if it was a money thing or not, but
yeah, I think
Steve
he was
Carell,
just,
excuse me, but Michael
Steve
Scott.
Carell. I think it was time for him to become what's the character from Despicable Me, Gru. It was just time for him to move on and do movies. I think he was,
because like they should have ended it. They should have just made that like the season finale when Michael.
Right.
Whatever.
See, and I think that happens with a lot of shows because, and I'll once again bring up 24.
Yeah.
Because 24, like every time it got to a point where it looked like maybe the series was going to end, and that did eight seasons, and then they did another half season, it was a 12 episode season, but
right.
that was like a special event series. And, you know, when they would talk to Kiefer Sutherland about, you know, whether he was going to come back, you know, and all that, he would always say things like, well, I think the series could, you know, do well without me. It's, you know, it's more about the story than about the character.
Yeah.
And even he wasn't realizing that it wasn't, because they tried to do, it was like 24 Legacy, I think it was called. And it was with a totally different character, and they even had a couple of the characters from the original series in it, and it just didn't work, because like with Michael Scott in The Office, a large percentage of the time shows like that become about a character or an actor's portrayal of a character, and
Hmm.
if you like lose that,
He was
it's
just too
done.
much of a main character in
Yep.
that show. Like he was the main character. I think it would have even been different, honestly, if like Jim and Pam
Right.
left, or if Dwight, he was a solid character there,
Right.
but I think if he left, if it still had
Yeah, they could have
Michael.
easily replaced Andy, you know, with
Yeah,
Dwight with Andy, and
Michael Scott
it
was
would have
just
been fine.
such a specific
Iconic. Yeah.
personality. Yeah,
Yeah.
like he made that show.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's funny because like I feel like there's a lot of shows that happens with though. I feel like there
Uh-huh.
are a lot. Just as we're sitting here thinking of this, I think there's a lot of shows that the same thing happens with. Scrubs. Scrubs was another one.
I remember that.
The what's his name, Zach Braff,
Yeah.
character on that. I think it was like the last season of it. He wasn't on at all, and it was a series about like his character, you know. So it
Right.
like literally he narrated all the episodes. So like
Hmm.
you know, for them to try to continue it without that character to me was just a little odd. And again, it comes down to I think like money that yeah,
Uh-huh.
but this we get a lot of ad revenue from these series, and you know they think they can continue that on.
But I think you lose a lot of your audience. Like even when I would watch Office reruns, pretty much once Michael left, like that's when I would stop watching it.
Yeah, yeah. If you're watching the reruns, yeah, I kind of
Yeah.
feel like the same way.
Or even when they still had it on Netflix.
Right.
They still had it on Netflix. I
Yeah.
would I would watch it until it got to that point. Michael would leave. I would get sad.
Yeah.
Oh, or on the I don't know if you watched like to the very end, because I never did before it was on, like where I could watch it episode by episode.
Mhm.
Gets to the very end and Michael made a little special appearance
Oh,
at
on the final episode.
yeah,
Yeah,
at
yeah, that was
what's her
cool.
name's wedding.
It
Dwight's
was
wedding,
Dwight's
right?
wedding. Yeah, it was Dwight
Yeah.
and I can't remember her
Oh,
name.
so sad, and he was
Yeah,
older then, like
yeah,
oh,
yeah, and he didn't. He only had one line in the whole thing, I think, and it
yeah.
was "That's what she said."
That's what she said, yeah.
Yeah, that was good. See now that though to me, and that's they talk about bringing that back again, right?
The Office.
Yeah,
Oh, they were gonna no, it was that they were gonna do like a completely different cast, pretty much. I
yeah, that
think
would be
some of the
lame.
old cast was gonna come maybe, but like
Yeah,
it was supposed to be
no,
kind
but
of
I
a
mean,
new
if they
cast.
tried to bring it back and they did it without Steve Carell,
Yeah,
I think it would be lame.
pointless. That's where it goes back to just make a different show.
Right,
Like Abbott Elementary.
right,
Abbott Elementary is very similar Office vibes with
right.
like the corniness, but
Yeah,
it's to me, I think it's still pretty funny,
yeah.
but
They
it
all
has
kind
that
of have
same
that fourth wall thing, where
yeah.
like they're aware the camera's there,
Yeah.
which I like.
Like they're actually being followed through, yeah. And I love that.
Yeah,
And Abbott Elementary, super funny.
yeah, yeah.
Like
That's another one.
same similar storyline kind of, just a
There's
different environment, but kind
there's
of same characters too.
yeah, and there's another one coming out that's like it's I think it's a hospital. It's based in a hospital, but it's by the people that did The Office, and it's that kind of show
Oh yeah.
that looks like it might be good. So, yeah,
Mm.
we'll see if that's any good.
Huh. I never heard of that
So,
one.
and I'm trying to think. There's going back to the movies thing. Though there were a few others that I was thinking of that I heard that they were coming out with sequels, and I was like, why? Why? I mean, even going back to going back to like talking about Marvel and
Mhm.
that kind of thing. I think even there, especially with the Disney Plus stuff that they're doing,
Oh
they're
yeah.
spreading that a little thin. Like some of those
Mhm.
Disney Plus series have been like not that good, and you start to worry that you're diluting your product so much
Yeah.
that really the quality of it is. And here's an example. The one series was Ms. Marvel, right?
Mhm.
And it's like a teenage girl who somehow gets powers and whatever. And
Oh
it was
yeah.
it almost felt like a what the heck is it, like maybe a Disney Channel or a Nickelodeon. It would have been one of those series. And I don't know, it was an odd series, and then they brought that character into one of the movies, which it just made the movie feel like it took a step down, because it had this character that was kind of a quirky character from a TV show. It just felt odd to me.
That's where I'll see like those it's because of all of those that when I'm out somewhere, I forget where was I with you guys? Maybe? I don't remember. It was like a character from
Uh-huh.
one of those that I saw and I was like, "Who the heck is
Yeah,
this?"
yeah, yeah, and that's
And
the
it was
thing.
from one of those like one-off
Yeah,
like branches of, you know. I do think some of them are good. Like I like the story of Miles Morales,
right,
and that's kind of a branch off of
right,
um obviously Spider-Man, but I
right.
think the Miles Morales one was
You're
and they
talking
made a
about the Into the Spider Verse, and then
yeah.
there was Across the Spider
Uh,
Verse. Yeah, that
I
that
like the both
that
of
now
them are
now
really good.
here's a great example though. I think that's one example of where the sequel was better than the original,
Oh yeah.
because the original had to go through the trouble of introducing you to the characters, and sometimes that slows the story down. Where the second one, you already knew the characters, you already knew their if you saw their first, you already knew why they were where they were and all that kind of thing. So it could just spend time telling its story, and that's one that obviously ended. I don't know if you saw it. I'm saying obviously as if I know you saw it, but that ended kind of on a cliffhanger because guess what? It was part one.
Mhm.
So there's going to be another one of those. I don't know when that's coming out, but that's one where you know I
It's
felt
appropriate to have
yeah,
a third one, but probably
yeah.
no more after 3. Those are the kind of shows that I feel like or movies, I guess, that I feel like, 2 or 3 sequels unless it's like going out of a book, and this is just my opinion, but I
Right.
think unless it's going after a book or
See, the comic ones kind of are because they're
right,
comic books,
right.
So um, the I don't know. Those are I think with those, as long as you can keep the stories good because they're based on kind of ongoing stories like that, which is the whole thing
Mhm.
of comic books, then they're not so bad. I think where
True.
they've run into trouble is where they haven't. It's got to be about the story.
Yeah.
It's got to all be about the story.
There was that other movie. What was it that you thought was better than the first one? Was it Aquaman? Didn't you see Aquaman 2?
Yeah, it was terrible. It was
Oh, cuz
terrible.
Aquaman 1 I thought was really bad.
Aquaman one of those, Aquaman one was the better, but the second one was
Oh,
just terrible. It was
really? Yeah, I didn't
yeah.
want. I
I
didn't.
don't
I
know.
didn't care about
I
the
don't know
first
what it
one.
is with those Aquaman movies. I mean, they're doing that whole thing with underwater, because they're underwater, but the
Obviously,
CGI
yeah.
is bad, and I don't know. It's just I
Oh,
don't
you
know.
said too much slow mo.
Too much. Well, that's all the now we're gonna go off on a on a tangent, but all the DC comic book movies, they do too much of the slow mo.
Yeah,
They overuse the slow mo. It's
yeah,
like you know first of all, the Flash. Why is he in slow mo? I don't understand. He's supposed to be
that's
super
funny.
fast. Why is he in slow mo? But yeah, those movies
They have to slow it
always
down so you can
overdo the
see
slow
him.
mo. Yeah, I get it. I get it.
I guess.
So
But anyways, guys, yeah,
that's our thoughts on too many movie sequels. And yeah, if you disagree, comment. If you agree, comment.
send us to your friends.
Yeah.
Everyone who's watching, send it to one friend, and we know
No,
because we see our
everyone who's watching,
analytics.
everyone who's listening or watching
Oh
should
yeah,
send us to 10 friends.
10 friends.
Yeah. And then if they send us to 10 friends, I can't do math, but I think that'll mean we'll have 11 people watching. which would be amazing.
If someone watching sends us to 10 friends and then their friends send us to 10 friends.
Yeah.
It's like if I have 1,000 people and each of them give me $1, I have $1,000.
Right.
And we see the analytics, so whoever sends us to the most people, you win a prize.
Yeah. We don't know what yet, but it'll be something. Once the merch shop opens, because, you know.
The merch shop.
All right. Thanks, guys, and keep on listening.
Till next time.